and meet the people who are the heart of our ministry. And if it's video you want, subscribe to the Bethany Baptist Church channel on YouTube. See the celebrations, the special events, and the many, many people who are helping to transform lives one at a time. Stay connected with David G. Evans on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and become a member of our broadcast family today.
The power to change your life's dilemmas is hidden in one name.
The reason that what I need from God many times is not responding to me is because I'm praying or speaking to it as though it has a choice.
If I understand God, he didn't like what he was looking at, and he changed it. He didn't take no back talk except for yes. Stop letting your problems sass.
Don't underestimate the power in you. You can make the shift.
You've been created to change what you don't like that you're looking at. You got too much power to be casual. Problem is you don't know it. Everywhere you go, a shift has to occur. It depends on what comes out of your mouth.
Shift your life into divine gear. Make this life-altering series yours now when you write us. Visit our website or call 1-800-591-8480.
Somebody shout shift.
What if you could make one decision to unleash everything great in your life? Would you do it? Would you say yes? Aren't you tired of your relationships, your health, and so much more suffering because you lack the truth you need to change? The life you desire is within your reach. You can achieve all the success, happiness, and prosperity you deserve by simply learning the secrets that lead to real personal transformation. Change is hard, but not impossible. You just have to make one radical decision to get real. And there's no better authority on the real steps to change than David G. Evans.
Some men trust in chariots. Some men trust in horses. But we will trust in the Lord.
David G. Evans is leading the charge to bring you the power to change your life. He is committed to the mission of helping you transform and become a person of power, and it starts with his all-new system to change your situation. At the centerpiece of this life-altering collection is David Evans' groundbreaking training course, From Ridiculous to Radical to Real. This means war. In this series, you will discover the steps to change. This series includes 2 powerful messages, each on winning the battle in your mind and cultivating a language of faith. That's 4 messages, 4 power-filled hours of material. If you want a better marriage, this series has the answers. If you want to achieve financial independence God's way, the secrets in this series will empower you to make it happen. If you want a life of power, anointing, and influence, this series will show you how to get it, and there's more. You're looking for serious, immediate results. So Bishop Evans will also include one of his best-selling messages called Weapon of Warfare. This classic teaching will build you up to start fighting in the spirit for what you deserve. This powerhouse collection, From Ridiculous to Radical to Real and Weapon of Warfare, will give you all the biblical strategies you need to change anything in your life. This collection will ship to you immediately with your gift today to David G. Evans Ministries. This ministry is revolutionizing the kingdom by empowering believers. Souls are
Well, praise the Lord, everybody. Welcome to On Point, the #1 Saturday morning Christian-based call-in talk show in America, live every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. On any smart device at David G. Evans 1. We're so glad you've joined us today, and we want to give you our call-in numbers: 1-866-743-8267, 1-866-743-8267. We're so glad you joined us. Please give us a call today, 1-866-743-8267, 1-866-743-8267.
Sound like me. Right.
Okay. Of course, joining us once again is our world-famous co-host, Reverend Nicholas Smith, along with our outstanding production team, we welcome you to this kingdom-based program. A lot going on this week.
Yep.
Big news. Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away last night. I was aware she had gone back in the hospital, but I was not aware that they were kind of not expecting her to survive more than a few weeks.
Yeah.
So they kept that pretty close to the vest, as we used to say back in the day. But I also was surprised to hear my president brought up the Supreme Court, and I listened intently, and he never mentioned her name.
Yeah, they asked him after the fact on his way to the helicopter or something.
Yeah.
And then was like, I just heard about it, the normal.
She was a great woman.
Yeah.
He knew about it
Yeah.
because that's an important piece of information for him.
Absolutely. Where is the soul of people where as soon as you hear about a person dying, politicians are already posting, we're going to nominate somebody as soon as we can. She ain't even been dead for like more than an hour or two.
You're asking the obvious this morning.
Okay.
There is no soul.
Like really?
There is no soul.
Yeah.
And now they're already talking about, I heard, who's the guy that's lined up with McConnell on the other side?
Lindsey Graham.
So Lindsey Graham, because I've learned how he thinks. He comes out and says, hold me to my words for what I said. But what that's going to do is they want to use that to hold Biden to something he said maybe 20 years ago, involving one of the justice nominations.
Okay.
Or the process. So, I've never seen Lindsey be benevolent without an agenda.
Absolutely.
So, but the problem is that they're going to have a majority vote from the House, and they don't have it.
Well, that actually, the Senate has a way of
Getting around that?
They do that nuclear option because the Senate is who gets the. I
Okay.
read it last night. The Senate who gets the Supreme Court in.
Okay.
They're supposed to go through all those hearings. That's why it takes so many days.
Right.
But Mitch McConnell's saying he might do that nuclear option where they just kind of put a vote up real fast, get the person confirmed.
What's the nuclear option?
That's just where you don't. I think it's where you don't need a certain amount of votes.
Do they actually need that distraction going into the election?
That's the thing. If they do this, it may go against them.
They don't need this going into the election. It's a dumb move.
Yep.
So the liberal dissenting vote on the court has passed away. And I saw a video of a young lady who was, in my sense, reacting inappropriately to the fact that she died. She was driving, screaming, basically saying, couldn't you have waited a couple of months she was beside herself.
Yeah.
Phones are lighting up. Kim from Louisville, Kentucky is on. Yes.
Yeah.
Kentucky is on the phone. Or Louisville, Texas.
I think that's the regular kid from Kentucky.
I think that's Louisville. I think that's Kentucky Kim. Could be wrong.
It might be
Could
Louisville,
be.
Texas.
I didn't know there was a Louisville,
Look at
Texas.
me, see.
Okay.
Okay.
So Kim is on the phone from Texas. You can join us for our discussion today. 1-866-743-8267. 1-866-743-8267. I'm not sure I understand why our government now is concentrating on things like 1776 commission. I'm not sure why we're doing this.
It's a whitewashing of history.
Okay.
Because that whole 1619 project
Okay.
that talks about the history of slavery and all this stuff like that, they've been cut another meat to his base.
Okay.
So instead of telling the truth about how America was constructed, let's just honor all its patriotic, the best parts of it, the nobility.
So they're changing the story? Is that what
They want to change the
that's
story.
This
The curriculum in the schools.
This mic's a little hot. This mic's a little hot, yeah. Just a tad. Really?
Yeah, so the 1619 project was a New York Times thing.
So he thinks that's going to help him win votes?
Yes, because his base is tired of hearing about all of the slavery,
About the history and all. It didn't. We're going to do a a Jews in Germany thing, act like it didn't exist.
Act like it didn't exist, and extol the virtues of America, and we're
So
patriotic.
here's the problem. You can put a commission in all you want. It's not going to change the reminders of walking around every day.
Absolutely. And I've learned, especially, I don't know about your era. Most of my Black history growing up did not come from school. They gave us a small foundation.
Really?
Most of my Black history, I had to study on my own or listen to other people talk to me about it that were older than me.
Well, I think we're generationally consistent. We weren't so much taught ours; we lived ours.
Okay.
So the discussion was raised because of the condition. So when I see myself as a monument, a statue of a young man's, drinking water out of a separate fountain. I see another monument of a young man had to use separate bathrooms. I see another monument of a young man who had to go to the side of the restaurant to get served. I see, these things are not going to fade. They are monuments in my life.
Right. Yeah.
They're, if you will, milestones, tombstones, whatever you want to call them. But they are very real, very solid. And if you look at me, I'm the guy whose grandparents had Ku Klux Klan on the lawn.
Yeah.
So I'm the reminder, no matter what commission they put together.
Yeah.
But do enough of us talk about it except when we're offended?
That's the thing.
Okay.
Because they're already changing some of the schools, like the books in Texas. Instead of calling them slaves, they were called interns.
They weren't interns.
But the next gen, they're trying to indoctrinate.
What were they being trained for?
That's the
thing.
They
were interning for what?
That's the thing.
Don't get me started.
I know they're indoctrinating the kids. So when they're
interns,
older, they're going to say it's interns. When somebody say they were slaves, no, they weren't slaves because our book said they were interns. So
if I take it out of the book, that removes the reality.
Until they come to their senses and.
So that's like Joseph's brothers destroying his coat, thinking they could destroy the vision.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting dynamic.
We are going to have to educate our kids on Black history more than the school system. Some of our teenagers now, if you ask them about certain people,
they don't know.
No idea who they are.
No idea about them.
We got to take ownership because the schools aren't going to do it.
Well, I don't think they've ever done, unless you were in an inner city school.
Yeah.
Inner city schools, I think, may have a little bit more curriculum directed towards Black history.
Yep.
But I can remember from our history books, when I got to boarding school, I don't recall hearing any, which is probably why there was such an upheaval and a shock to the culture when we, when I started channeling A. Trap Brown and Stokely Carmichael at the boarding school.
Yeah.
So you get I don't call it a riot, but we did have an uprising.
Yes. Yeah.
And it did have aggressive elements to it. Yes.
Because they got to know. Some of the educators in the comments section are saying that some textbooks they're saying instead of the Atlantic slave trade, it's called forced migration.
Okay, that's a nice way to talk about it, but here's the thing. When I got to the boarding school that I attended, the indoctrination was so thorough that the minority students had begun to adapt a loss of racial pride. And they had become guilty thinking that bringing attention to their race was playing a card. When in actuality, they were convinced that by being racial, they were being racist. And when I got there, they were totally silent. And absorbing insults that astounded me. So when I started to talk to them about this is not appropriate, it took a minute because they were thoroughly convinced whatever they were called, however they were treated, it was okay because they just wanted to get along.
Wow.
And, it was so then here I come and I'm like, retaliating because you asked me, do I really have to comb my hair?
Yeah. From the hood, so it's a different dynamic.
I'm like, did he really ask me that? That was right before I went upside his head. But it was the point is, I saw the thoroughness of the indoctrination.
Yep.
To where, I have friends that came out of that system, that school, who were actually ashamed of who they were based upon the environment they were in.
Absolutely.
Let's go to Kim. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great today. Welcome to On Point.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, I'm sorry. My show is a little bit delayed. So
yeah, turn your volume down, and you won't hear yourself.
Okay. So I want to say one thing. It is correct. I am from Texas, and it is Louisville.
That's right,
Louisville. Now,
Louisville,
help us out. What is that near?
So it is outside of Dallas.
Okay.
Yes. So my reason for calling in was you guys have just talked about so much so quickly. So I want to make a really quick comment on Ginsburg and then bring it back to what you guys were saying about race, not race, but just education within the schools.
Sure. Because
I just had a very interesting conversation. But one of the things that I found very interesting with the passing of Ginsburg, and like you said, the reaction is the inappropriate reaction of a lot of people, but it also seems to be a distraction from just kind of the big message and the big thing that's been going on. With her passing, it seems to be another person in Congress in that place of decision making that has some type of morals and some type of values. Her platform was that women should be included in the decision making process. It shouldn't just be a white male thing, that other people have value that they bring in, and they should come in, they should be allowed to come into the decision making process. So that was something that just really stuck out to me about her.
Sure.
Then just some of the other comments of things that have been going on, this just kind of shaking of what's going on around the world and in life. And then when you guys started talking about the education here in Texas, where, you still have the Confederate flags, you still have the monuments, you still have a lot of things, that brings to mind just how we have places, and just like Pastor Nick was saying, the whitewashing of history. And this past week I was having a conversation. I do work in the education system, but I'm actually a school psychologist. And I was a teacher in Philadelphia for many years.
Okay.
But my conversation this week was with an educator who was kind of upset and wanted to get my feedback on the fact that in some school districts they're now kind of requiring teachers to pick out books that are reflective of the black experience, and he's an African American male, and he was saying that, wow, I think that this is a great thing because now we're finally going to be included in schools and this, that, and the other. And one thing that I had to caution him about was, remember, when we're giving people autonomy to do such a thing, we're also still giving them autonomy to write a narrative about us and to write that narrative of what they're going to be teaching our children. And I had to have him remember that because you have a book that is inclusive of African American people, or it reflects African Americans, or it tells a story, doesn't always mean that it's a positive story that it's telling, and it doesn't always mean that that story is going to be instilling the values that we as a people would want for our children, or depicting them in such a way. So I told him, we have to be very careful, just like what Pastor Nick said, when we're allowing other people to educate our children, and then thinking when they're putting policies or putting things in place, it is for the benefit of us, because there is still sometimes that agenda to pass across what I want you to think about you. And when the enemy wants to do it, he'll do it in a very sneaky way, so it's not very obvious. So that was my comment.
Let me ask you a question. How long have you lived in Texas?
So I have lived in Texas for 3 years.
Okay.
I'm originally from, I know you didn't ask me that, but your answer to the question, I have lived in Texas for 3 years, going on 4. I'm originally from Louisiana.
Okay.
I grew up as a military child living in several different states, but my adult ideal and identity I got while living in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So I always tell people I have a very different view of the South, especially after living in the North.
Now, the obvious, what always impresses me, it makes an impression upon me. Are you still there, Kim? Yeah. What always impresses me in Texas was the obviousness of the symbols.
I'm unable to hear Pastor. I'm unable to hear Bishop's
What happened?
question.
All right, hold on a second. Hold on just a second.
Oh,
Are you there? Kim? No, her light's still on.
you hear somebody back there.
Kim? Call us back, Kim. We want to finish talking to you. All right. Hello, Kim?
Can you pick it up now?
Hello.
Hello, Kim, are you there? No, I can't hear her. And I can't disengage either.
I'll hang it up now.
Okay. Call us back, Kim. Let's go to line 3. Who's on line 3?
Robin from Delaware. 1-3.
Good morning, Robin. How are you?
Good morning, Bishop and Pastor Nick. How are you today?
All right, welcome to On Point. What's your comment today?
Yes, I have a comment and a question for you. What did you think of the town hall meeting with Joe Biden and the one with Trump? And also, I was watching it, and I know the moderator asked about the NAFTA that Biden was against. What was that? Because I wasn't sure what that meant.
Pastor Nick, you familiar with what Robin is asking?
I'm about to look it up. You said the NAFT?
Yeah.
Oh, the
You mean NAFTA?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, the North American Trade Agreement between Mexico and
yeah. Okay.
All right.
What was your question on that?
Oh, yeah, Biden was against it when he was vice president.
Okay.
And now he's for it, so I want to know what was the difference.
I wonder what his switch was. Do we know?
No, I'm gonna find out.
We're going to find out for you. What else? What else do you have on your agenda today, Rob?
Oh, what did you watch the town hall meeting in Philadelphia with Biden and Trump?
I saw a piece of it. I was working.
Okay.
So
what did
it was.
you think? What did you take away?
It appeared to me that the agendas are distinct. It appears to me that Biden appears to have more sensitivity to the needs and the plights of working people, where our existing president seems still to be disconnected. And I think part of his problem at this point is a credibility issue. Mm-hmm. And I think he's saying what he thinks he needs to say in a situation, but it doesn't ring true to me. Biden's sincerity and his integrity are a stark difference from the performance of our president at this time. Mm-hmm. And there's no way of getting around it. There's, I call him my president because I'm an American citizen.
Correct.
But I'm still appalled at some of the things he does and says, because my view of a president is someone who functions at a much higher level than this.
Right, you're right, Bishop. Yeah, and then for him to say he's going to give with the $13 billion to Puerto Rico all of a sudden, and I think it's because a lot of the people
It'll never get there.
Mm-hmm.
It'll never get there, because if they were going to do it, if he was going to do it and it was important to him, I'm not sure if where was he that he was throwing paper towels to people? Was that Puerto Rico?
Yes, in Puerto Rico.
I don't.
2017.
Yeah, I don't know if people saw the message in how he was distributing help. It was disorganized. It was disrespectful. It was half-handed. It was ham-handed. It was condescending. It was discriminating, because I'm clear, had the crowd been different, he would not have been throwing things at them.
Mm-hmm. That was so disrespectful.
I thought, and it says when I'm watching people, I'm watching for some revelation of character. The Bible says, a tree by the fruit that it bears. Mm-hmm. So the nature of the tree is revealed by what it displays. So it is difficult from a kingdom point of view to disconnect his actions from who he is. So that's my issue. And anyone that's biblical is going to have to ignore that to say what he does is okay.
That's true,
You know,
Bishop. That's true.
it's just,
That's
you know,
true.
it's just not correct. Thank you, Rob.
All right, that's one last comment.
Go ahead.
Bishop. I had a couple of breakdowns, and I want to just tell everyone that Reverend Tiffany, I started counseling with her a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that has any issues, she is awesome. She has a good heart.
Mm-hmm.
She will work with you. And Pastor Nick, you're very lucky to have her as your wife.
I was trying to be graceful.
But
she
is, I'm telling you, she has really helped me. And to anybody who needs help, call Pathway Counseling, because she is really on point, and I love her. I just love her. So
Thank you for that endorsement,
Tiff. I
Tiff.
just want to say that. And y'all have a blessed rest
We
of your day.
we think she's pretty cool too.
Yeah,
Yes,
she all right.
cool.
Talk to you soon.
All right,
Bye bye. I think we got Kim back on 4. 1. Kim, is that you?
Yes, this is me.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question. When I've had to minister in Texas, what I have noticed is the obviousness of the historic context of the state, as modern as it appears. The flags of Confederacy, all the obvious symbols of another era are there. And I wonder, for someone that lives there, is there a daily tension, or is that an environment that, Texans of color get used to? How do you all deal with it's not hidden, it's just, I don't know if it's subtle. Is there a tension there among the population?
So as I said, being somebody who has lived elsewhere and has a different viewpoint of what's going on here. When I first moved here, I cried. When I was younger, the ideal moving from Louisiana was that you've made it when you can move to Texas, because this is the up and coming place. You've made it, because the cost of living here is very expensive. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be very succinct and quick with your time. So I don't think people of color here, a lot of people of color here, notice the tension, the racism, the backwardness of Texas.
Okay.
Because we've been taught, or they've been conditioned to think that when you make it here, then you've made it. However, the things that they don't realize, like I said, coming from someplace else, coming here and living here, the things that you don't realize is we are still living in that slave mentality. What I mean is, I know a lot of people here who own houses, but in order to stay in that house, they have to work 2 and 3 jobs to pay for the house that they live in.
Okay.
Not only that, I also know people who end up having to take boarders in order to live the Texas dream, because in Texas, everything is bigger and better.
Okay.
And we, I think as black people, don't notice the tension or the need that is on our neck, because we're so busy trying to live the Texas dream of bigger and better.
Okay.
So there is still an obvious backwardness. There is still an obvious feeling of oppression here. However, I think that so many people are blinded by chasing the golden dream that they don't even recognize it. But like I said, being somebody who came from someplace else and came here, not necessarily as my choice anymore, but as a keeping of a promise, then I wasn't blinded by what everybody else thought Texas was, because I had found that someplace else, and it didn't cause a burden to my life. But here, it is a burden just to even have a minimum. That's why I say it's very oppressive here. And I'm a professional, and I work in a very good job where I have a very good pay, and it still doesn't afford me the ability to be able to buy a home in the community that I work. But I don't think a lot of people notice that here.
So there is a dynamic, I believe, that is similar but just different because of location, and that is Texas dreamers get the house, get the car, and have to do anything you have to do to get it. Whereas in urban centers around the country, jewelry, clothing, automobiles, make it look like you're not from the ghetto. So we've got this public display of apparent well-to-do-ness that belies what goes on behind closed doors and belies the neighborhood that I come from. So in my context, when I grew up in the projects, people would have all this fabulous stuff, but we still lived in the Fairground projects.
Yeah.
So the dream was to look like you didn't live there, or to appear to be superior to everybody else that lived there. You know, our family didn't fall into that. We thought moving out of the project and getting a home and all that was the step. But some people were willing to just kind of look like they were doing well and have to drive home to the fairground.
I would agree with that, and I would just add one other thing to that. So, like when we're talking about, you know, the conditioning of our minds, when I get in that mentality that I want to look like I've achieved, because again, this is a place where, you know, a lot of people who I live around, we're all transplants from Louisiana, and like I said, you've made it when you can move from Louisiana to Texas. You know, we just call this it's another extension of Louisiana. But in having that mindset that I finally made it, because now I can move into a neighborhood where they live, but we're still treated the same things that everybody else is experiencing. We're still treated. Several years ago, my sister moved into a neighborhood, my sister and her family, her husband and her children moved into a neighborhood that was a predominantly white neighborhood, and my brother, who had recently graduated from high school, had come to visit her and was in a park in their neighborhood playing basketball, and removed his shirt while playing basketball, and his underwear were showing above his basketball shorts, and he was arrested for that, for carnal knowledge of a minor, because there were children in the park, and he was exposing something that should not have been seen.
Wow.
And with him spending time in jail, they wanted him to register as a sex offender for showing his underwear in a park while playing basketball. And keep in mind, he wasn't the only person there who had his shirt off. He just happened to be the only person of color there that had his shirt off. So when you talk about, but again, when we're thinking about it, I got to do anything that I possibly can to get into this neighborhood where I made it. But when we see things like that, it's like, well, you know what? He shouldn't have been there with his underwear showing anyway. So we didn't think about the fact that this is racism. You're targeting us. It immediately goes to, well, we're living this here standard life right now, and we need to walk the line. Then it also transfers over into your area of employment. Because I need this job in order to maintain what it is that I've got to make it look like I've made it and to feel like I've made it, then I allow my bosses and my superiors, who a lot of times don't look like me, to treat me in ways that normally I come home and I say, you know what, I quit that job, but I can't quit it because then everything else that I'm maintaining falls apart.
I call it the tyranny of necessity.
Exactly. And because it is so much, it's such a level of oppression here, then the necessity is so great that it allows for certain things. You know, we want our kids to be able to go to the schools where we're in the minority, because here football is everything. So I have that football dream for my kid, so that means that I have to put him in a school, or I feel like I have to put him in the school where he has the opportunity to make it and be seen on the football field. So the school that I have to select is the school that tells him that he's not able to wear his hair in his natural state. You know, that's the school where they're telling me that I'm not able to express myself in such a way. However, you know, while my child can't wear dreadlocks in his hair, or isn't allowed to wear dreadlocks to go past his shoulder, or my kids aren't able, then they can have their children come in, and they can have their sons that have long hair that swoop over in front of their faces and things, and it's okay. because it looks neat, because that's the standard. But that's a double standard that we don't look at.
Okay.
When it gets down to it, then sometimes we bow to it and, well, you know what, I'm going to cut my hair because that's ghetto anyway, or I'm not going to do this because that's again, us allowing them to set a standard for us that changes our mindset. And what Pastor Nick said about, them whitewashing or saying that I am a constant reminder of what it is. One of the things is I can be a constant reminder of what it is, but if I'm denying to myself that that's what I am, because like Pastor, my education about my blackness and my history coming up was that I was a slave. And I was a slave, and that was it. So that made me embarrassed, and I hated Black History Month when we had to review the fact that I was a slave because it reminded me that I was a slave.
Yeah.
So then, it reminded me of the oppression, but that, again, was a systematic tearing down of my mind and making me ashamed of who I am. So when they start to rewrite history, then when they rewrite it to make them look good, then a lot of us will be willing to accept it because it makes us feel good and makes us feel better, and it makes us think that we finally made it to the point where we have assimilated.
I'm starting to think that, do you have to be from my generation that lived the history to be offended by the fact that people may try to erase it?
I'm offended by it.
I don't think you have to be from your generation.
Okay.
You just have to be aware that we have a history. And I think...
Then who are the people that would accept this then?
You said who are the people
who
would accept it?
Who are the people that would accept this then? What generation is that?
Well, I don't think it's a generational thing, because you're going to have a lot of different people from a lot of different generations who are going to be accepting of I'm willing to take the new narrative that you're saying, because again, it makes me feel good about myself. I think the people who are going to be willing to accept it are the people who have a denial mindset, of people who have a denial of their blackness, who have a denial of I came from, or not even a denial from, because sometimes your denial is an ignorance of it. Because I haven't heard that I have a history, or I haven't been taught, then I haven't been associated with the history. The only history I've been associated with is a history of negativity. So I don't want that history of negativity. I don't want the embarrassment. I don't want the shame. So if you start telling me that, you know what, it wasn't slavery, it was indentured servitude, it was forced migration, then that starts to make me feel a little bit better. So then, you know what? Okay, I become accepted of it. So then when I have my children or I have my grandchildren, then I don't talk to them about slavery, because now I don't have to, because those words aren't being used anymore. So it doesn't become, it does become an erasure of our history.
You know what's really significant? I think that the oppressed mindset, which is generationally passed on, by virtue of a lack of sharing history, I believe that some oppressed mindsets become very adept at denying the negatives in the history. Like, we make heroes out of the drug dealers in our neighborhoods. As long as they're making money, they become focal points of admiration. And we will deny the existence of them, or deny what they actually do, in order to justify our existence and kind of pretty up our own history, our own present. I think I'm just Kim. I'm glad you called us. You said you're a psychiatrist by education.
I'm a school psychologist.
Psychologist. Okay. So we'll call on you from time to time if that's all right.
That is absolutely fine. And like I say, I love you guys. I try to watch everything. And again, when I lived in Philadelphia, I used to come to Bethany and travel, like you say. Because I had traveled longer to
get in trouble.
And stay far longer. So I never, ever, ever. And if I could just make a request, if you guys will, if you guys are going to call on me whenever you want, I'm available. But if there was one skit that you guys did. It was the the trial of Adam and Eve.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know if you guys
Crimes
know
Against
that.
Heaven.
It was a couple-
We aired it a couple months ago, I think,
it was
right?
a while ago. If you guys can find that and repost it, so that that was a very defining and life.
We did repost it a couple months ago. Yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed that.
To find it. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna start
Give
looking for
your,
that. That was a very life-defining moment for me, and I think that was one of the things where that. So yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, don't hang up. Reverend Val's going to get your information,
We
okay?
can send you the link.
Okay.
It's on YouTube stuff, right?
Yeah. All right, talk to you soon. You got it, Reverend Val?
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bishop, the other thing too.
Yeah.
We talk about.
Now, do I hang this up or do I leave it alone?
She got it.
Okay.
About the other group.
Yeah.
You're seeing a more conservative black base come up
Okay.
that are even denying racism and systematic and systemic racism.
Wow.
You're actually arguing with these people, and they think that these are black people, that the police killings and all these things are isolated incidences.
How many times does it have to happen for it not to be isolated?
That's the thing. I had somebody try to argue me down that some conservative black economists were saying that women getting less pay, these things happening to minorities, aren't a byproduct of their gender or color.
What's it a byproduct of?
That's I'm like, what's a byproduct of? They try to explain away that it's just simple economics and how the system works, and it's not racially based.
Did you see that? And this is a sidebar.
Sure.
The young man who is African American, who is the Trump apologist, kind of looks kind of nerdy.
Oh, he's the young guy.
Yes,
guy?
yeah.
I can't remember his name. But I know you're talking about. Yeah. He says a lot of stupid stuff.
Yeah, they recently found out though that allegedly he's got all these inappropriate behaviors that makes Trump okay with him because he's kind of does the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So CNN just fired him. I understand he can't come back on CNN because of some of these accusations.
They got a huge Black for Trump's movement with him and a bunch of other people.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Okay. Where do we go? We got Jay and we got Danny. Who's first?
Jay.
Jay's on 3 or 4?
4.
Good morning, Jay. How are you, man?
Good morning, Bishop and Pastor Nick. How are you guys this morning?
We're doing great. Welcome again to On Point.
Thank you, sir. So, a couple different things that I need to hit on this morning.
Okay.
I had an emergency meeting last night, conference call of my Republicans committee friends, and we talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
This thing with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, God rest her soul, it's big. Restructuring the court could be Trump's legacy.
Yeah.
Which is something about 50% of the people who were on the call last night were in agreement with. The other 50% are like, no, let's not touch this. This could go against us. This could backfire big. Which is, the whole conversation went on for about an hour and a half last night.
Okay.
12:30, 1 o'clock this morning. And I just thought it was interesting that they're already reacting, and the woman hasn't been dead 24 hours.
It was immediate.
It was immediate.
Mitch McConnell put out a letter like within an hour of her death.
They can't legislate help for the citizens of the country. Mm-hmm. They can't get past that hurdle, but they want to conquer this. Mm-hmm. But is it possible? And my purview, Jay, is a little different in that a lot of the evangelical pastors were friends of mine, are still associates of mine, and I see it as purely two things: political move, but also to garner the support of the evangelical base.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's it right there.
Okay.
That's it right there. That conservative base is something that, he can't really win without that base.
Okay.
If there was and we've seen the numbers, and I see the polls that come in, and I see all the metrics. We need that base, and that's why he does some of the things that he does.
Okay.
Pastor Nick, you mentioned the nuclear option. Mm-hmm. The nuclear option, Senate rules require that there be 3/5 majority once upon a time. Now they eliminated that for executive branch nominations and extended it in 2013 to judicial nominations, which only requires a simple majority. 51 votes. That's the nuclear option.
Yeah, 50-50, and then Pence will come in as vice
Not even
president.
50-50, just 51.
50 years, yeah, Pence will come in and be the deciding
The Republicans have the vote.
Yeah,
right
they
now.
have
They
it.
have the numbers.
Okay.
But there are some senators who are saying we're not even going to touch this right now.
Some Republican senators?
Some Republican senators
Okay.
who know that this could backfire big, because of the thing that happened in 2016 with Merrick Garland.
Okay.
Remember that the Republicans refused to accept any of President Obama's nominations
Mm-hmm.
because they thought, the incoming president should have that option, that choice to.
So is the chess move to have a couple Republican senators oppose, which leaves McConnell no choice but to exercise the nuclear option?
That's pretty much where it's headed.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
That's exactly where it's headed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate, and I sit back and I listen, and I go to these meetings, and I vote my conscience.
Right.
I don't support every Republican, politician coming down the line. I certainly vote my conscience, and in November, I'll certainly be voting my conscience
Sure.
on the President of the United States.
Sure.
But there was something else I wanted to mention. I went to boarding school as well.
Did you?
And I went to Girard College in Philadelphia.
Did you? I went to Church Farm School in Exton.
Okay, I know that.
We used to compete.
Yes, we did.
Yes, sir.
And so when I started,
Our wrestling team used to throttle your wrestling team. And I ran every hurdler you had into the ground.
Again, I don't know about throttling. I'm going to leave that alone right now. However, in the early 80s when I started at Girard as a first grader, predominantly white school.
Absolutely.
That's just what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about Black history education, and by the time I got to 12th grade,
Mm-hmm.
we were a majority, a 70% overwhelmingly African American school.
Yeah.
And Black history still was not.
When did you graduate?
1995.
Okay. I graduated in 69. You were, what, 2 days old?
Listen, my mother was 9 years old. I'm just saying.
That's funny.
So, it wasn't taught. Now, we did have a teacher who, she just passed last year, wonderful educator by the name of Miss Shirley Dixon, Dr. Shirley Dixon, excuse me, who taught, she created a slave ship in the classroom and created this, she wanted us to know our history.
Sure.
And she knew the audience that she had, and she taught us about finance, and we had a checkbook in class.
Okay.
Literally, to learn about finance, and we bought stocks and bonds and investable securities as a class because she wanted to teach Black children how to be prepared for the world that was coming.
Sure.
She was and she was a fifth grade teacher, and she was the only one who really took an entire semester to teach Black history in the school. In 13 years of going to school, everything else, of course, they touched on Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, and maybe a few of the other scientific inventors, Jan Mansfield, Garrett Morgan, some of the others, but there was no real Black history in the school.
Well, you juxtapose that against my guidance counselor at my boarding school, who, when he asked me what I wanted to do with my future, I told him it was either business or science. And he recommended that my people did better working with their hands. That was my guidance counselor.
The Malcolm X thing?
Yeah, and his ironically, his name was Jay Wright. He was Mr. Wrong that day.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And still, and I ask my nieces and nephews, and I try to challenge them, and they don't. And so I find myself having to teach, and I don't mind teaching, but I find myself having to teach because that's the only way they're really going to learn.
Yeah.
I'm big on genealogy. I've done the ancestry DNA, and I can trace my mother's family back to the 1700s, and I'm certainly getting further now that I've unlocked the DNA on my father's side.
Have you run into the Native American connection with the African American in the United States during the time of slavery and afterwards?
Not in my family.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, my great-great-grandfather, interesting story, name was the Reverend Winston West, and is the founder of the Springfield Missionary Baptist Church in Madison, Georgia. Very small town between Augusta and Atlanta. And he was a contemporary of Marcus Garvey. And it was because of his close relationship with General Sir. At one point he was a Union soldier posing as a spy in the Confederate Army. Okay. And was a friend of General Sherman, and was invited to the meeting where they came up with the term 40 acres and a mule.
Sure.
So I'm finding a lot of interesting things about my own family.
If you get a chance, I gotta let you go. If you get a chance, check out the Cherokee Nation and the blending of that Cherokee Nation becoming a landing spot for a lot of slaves that came out of that were released, and some of the struggles, and then how the migration forced them over to Oklahoma and North Dakota, South Dakota, those places that you don't normally associate us with in population. But check that connection out, and I think it'll intrigue you.
Brothers, it was a pleasure.
Good talking to you again, man.
Yes, sir.
As always, talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye. Danny is next on line 3. Hey, Danny, how you doing?
Bishop, good morning, Pastor Nick.
Morning, sir. And then we're going to Tamaya in Irvington, and that'll take us to our close. Go ahead, Danny.
Okay. All right. Last week we were talking about some things, and I didn't get a chance to talk with you, but it did come to fruition this week as to what happened here a week ago. What happened was the president paid a visit to South Florida.
Okay.
And upon his visit, which I found very strange, and what happens, I find that he can't, he's like a bad refrigerator, he can't keep nothing.
Okay.
Where he gave an insight where he was asking the vice president to the vice president to give him some names that could make good nominees for the Supreme Court.
Really?
What? Yes, he did. Okay? So I said, well, why would, to myself, why would you be asking that particular question at this particular time?
Because they weren't expecting her to live.
Right. I said, well, there's no vacancy. So, and you put it so eloquently when you said the chess moves.
Yeah.
And I was thinking the same thing. There are certain moves that are being done that are being set up for the jump.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
There's no denying it.
Yeah.
How's my sister doing?
She's doing great.
And you doing all right too?
Yes.
Okay.
And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is that we have similar life experiences where me growing up in the South, where I experienced racism wholeheartedly, where after 6 o'clock you had to be on your side of the tracks. You couldn't be on the east side.
Absolutely.
Different things. And you have to know your history, okay? If you don't know your history, and that's what's happening in the generations, they don't know exactly what happened. Because a lot of people think that South Florida was built by other people, but they don't know the black history of how it actually was built, South Florida, when it was nothing but swamps and mosquitoes. You had former slaves, you had people that came from the islands that developed South Florida. They actually lived on the beach, but as history came knowledge where they said people came from the north, they moved them off of the beach. They were actually landowners on the beach. They were forced off the beach.
Wow.
Inland.
A lot of people don't know that Hilton Head Island, there's one man they've been trying to get his land from him for the last 35 or 40 years. And of course his plot of land is quite valuable now. And he's an African American man who has held it. He was the only one that wasn't pushed off because he was the only one that managed to pay his taxes every year. So they've tried every way they know. Danny, we got one more call we have to take.
All right, Bishop.
All right, talk to you soon, man.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Tamaya,
Yes.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing fine. Welcome to On Point. We've got about 2 minutes.
Okay. I was calling from Irvington, New Jersey. I'm a member as well. I was calling to just say that I completely agree with the Texan caller.
Yes.
That you had earlier. The reason behind a lot of the unexplainable stances from Republicans, traditional Republicans have towards Trump, or black people who are Trump supporters, or COVID deniers and mask opposers, is that mindset that it feels better. This feels more comfortable. This helps me sleep at night if this is the truth rather than the actual truth. They're so, I feel like, consumed with, if I just, or as Conan O'Brien once says, when all else fails, you always have delusion. They'd rather just be delusional about all that's going on and have all these mindsets than actually accept the truth, especially when it comes to black people trying to assimilate and black Trump supporters. I have an aunt who lives in Texas as well, who's also an educator. And I also, like you, like to look into the opposite of my beliefs, just so I can see and not be, not sit in an echo chamber. So as I look into and read, and it's a whole nother world that people really believe that Trump is the hero, he's come, all these different things. She's one of them. And me and her go at it on our Facebook arguments. I even have a blog where I put her on called The Charade, because her name's Aunt Sherry. And we literally just go at it about stuff. I'm like, how could you possibly believe that? But she'd rather have the thought of, we're not victims as African Americans. That whole mindset, that's victim mindset. You're on the Democratic plantation. And the only thing that can justify how people think this way is just to keep the safety of, I can't be a victim. I'm fine. Everything's fine. They're lying. They're the liars. So I just really agree with that Texan caller when she called in, the psychiatrist, I believe she was.
So Aunt Sherry does not believe her lying eyes. Is that what she's saying? She's not believing what she's seeing?
Yeah, we have arguments about Black Lives Matter, about everything. Okay. So, and at the end, we always go, we love each other. We'll see you at the next holiday event.
The guy that got choked out, how did she see that?
The guy that got choked out. Oh, she's like, well, you need to just look from, she said that was, she admitted that was a horrible thing to happen, and they should be prosecuted. Everyone who's involved should be prosecuted if anything like that. And I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. But then she said,
she flipped right back, didn't she?
Out here looting. And I said, I get that. I don't agree with the looting.
Yeah.
I understand, but I'm with you. But she's just like, but we need to focus on that, and they need to be arrested. So I stop switching the conversation now. You said you agreed that they need to be prosecuted, but like other people who have passed away, we had a Philando Castile argument, Alton Sterling, and she's like, well, he wasn't really a good went into the whole narrative of how, he's not really, his past, and this and, look, excuse me, what is wrong with you? You don't see that?
The next time you talk to her.
Yes, and she's
next time you talk to her.
Kneeling, I can't.
Yeah, next time you talk to her, ask her, does she realize that oftentimes behavior is an interpretation of environment? Ask her that question.
Writing it down now.
Behavior is an interpretation of environment, and it'll start to make you understand why different races, ethnicities, economic dimensions, why they behave the way they do. It's based upon the environment that they've been exposed to.
Right.
And that's wealthy to poverty to everyone. Just virtually everyone behaves based on their interpretation of their environment.
Right.
Which is why when people become Christians and their environment becomes kingdom, their behavior ought to change. We got to go to my, so glad to hear from you.
Thank you for giving me a moment. Have a great day.
Talk to you soon now. This has been On Point, the #1 Saturday morning Christian-based call-in talk show in America. Live every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. at David G. Evans 1 on any smart device. 12 o'clock today, we'll have our outdoor service. We want you to join us in your automobile. I want you to stay strong. Be with us all day tomorrow. If you're anywhere near Atlantic City, tomorrow at 4 o'clock, we'll be preaching an outdoor service at the New Hope Church with Bishop John Howard. Stay strong, stay saved. And remember, faith acts like a thing is so, even when it's not so, that it might be so. God bless you, and I'll see you real soon.